Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. Today I'm joined by Neale to discuss the best captaincy options for double game week 35. Hopefully after recommending Brighton's Shane Duffy last week, we'll do a better job this time around. I just want to say before I say welcome Neale, for those watching on the live stream and the video version, Neale's had an issue with his camera, so we've just hastily got together a whatever random image that happens to be backwards, but nevertheless you'll better hear his voice. So Neale, welcome. How are you?
Hello Joe. Yeah, unfortunately the same problem that struck me, I think it was about a month ago, wasn't it, when I lost my webcam then. It's happened again, and obviously it's just occurred about 2 minutes before we went on there, so I haven't had time to fix it yet, but hopefully you can still hear me, which is the main part of the podcast. No one really tunes in to see my face, so
no. Well, we'll muddle on. So what I've done is I've put the fixtures up on the screen for those watching. It's an absolute gargantuan display of fixtures taking place because it's a double game week. So most people will want to focus their captaincy on players with two games, in spite of Duffy letting us down last week. From that, we want really a perfect blend of form, pedigree of success and fixtures. And with Brighton and Arsenal visiting Wolves, their striker Raul Jimenez looks a great option. What do you think of him for the armband, Neale?
Yeah, well, he's certainly leading the way in terms of the captaincy poll on our site. There's a lot of debate this week over who the best candidate is, and the fact that there's not really one standalone candidate in that captain poll is sort of reflective of the wider debate, really. But Jimenez is top of that captain poll as we speak. I think he's got about 28% of the vote, and he's certainly someone I'm looking at myself. I haven't decided by no means yet, but yes, he is possibly the player of the season in terms of value for money. I would say certainly be in the running for our team of the season at the end of the year. His XGI, which again I'm sure everyone knows this by now, but for the uninitiated, this is expected goal involvement, where opt to calculate the quality of your chances and the chances that you create as well to come up with a figure. Now, in the last 6 home matches, because Wolves are at Molineux twice in double game week 35, so in his previous 6, he is third behind Pogba and Aguero for expected goal involvement at home. So that is a good start. It's a good place to start. He has attacking returns of 4 of his last 5 at home, including 3 double-digit hauls as well. Well, all of these returns of 10 or more points have come at Molineux this season. I tuned into the Scoutcast last night with yourself and Az and Adam.
Yes.
Who made a very good point about the atmosphere at Molineux, how they do seem to arouse themselves for those evening games or midweek games. And then thinking back, I thought that's actually a really good point, because they've produced some sort of barnstorming displays, haven't they, in front of the floodlights. Think of the Chelsea game, Tottenham game, the Man United Cup game. I that's sort of X factor, isn't it? That isn't quantifiable.
It is
by stats or even the eye test. It's just something that it adds to the mix.
It does, yeah. What Adam was saying was that in the 6 evening kickoffs against Spurs, Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester United, as well as Liverpool and Manchester United in the Cup, he scored 4 goals and assisted another 3. Arsenal 7:45 kickoff. Absolutely, it's Jimenez time. I'm looking. I think the Arsenal game's potentially better than the Brighton game, but I think the Brighton game on current performance is quite mouth-watering as well. So Brighton have conceded 7 in their last 2 games. Don't we just know it? As Duffy captainers, Houghton has been playing a 4-3-3 for most of 2019 with absolutely hardly any success at all. So last night he sort of swapped back to a 4-4-1-1 because Gross was back, but that relies a lot on Gross and Murray to perform. They're struggling this season. They're struggling with either age or injury or fitness. So now their prized formation of 4-4-1-1 is also now vulnerable. So they're vulnerable when they mix it up. They're vulnerable when they stick to the plan. They're vulnerable. Wolves should do well in this, and Also, as we said, Arsenal, they've got the
Yeah.
Jimenez evening factor as well. I think he's
Well,
my captain at the moment, but
is he?
I am considering others.
Okay.
And
Well,
yeah.
I mean, you could even say there's another option within that Wolves
Okay,
camp as
yeah,
well.
who's that then?
Yeah. Well, Diogo Jota, of course, who's Jimenez's strike partner now in that 3-5-2 that Santo's been playing. Now, he's actually outscored Jimenez in the last 6 home games in terms of goals and assists, actual tangible returns. But he's exceeding his so what we call XGI delta, which is the difference between what he's actually scoring and what his predicted points are, is the highest of any player in the last 6 home matches. So Jimenez has got the underlying stats, I think, to give him the nod over Jota. But you make a good point about the opposition there as well. I think it's not just the fact that it's midweek against Arsenal. The fact that Arsenal aren't that good away from home. We all know Brighton's limitations. Yes, Arsenal kept a clean sheet at Watford on Monday night, but they played, what was it, 80 minutes of that with a man advantage, and they weren't even that good. Watford certainly had a go. And Brighton and Arsenal, 32 matches combined away from home this season, a total of 2 clean sheets away from home. So, yeah, there's a lot going for Jimenez and Wolves in Gameweek 35.
Yeah, and he should be nailed as well. He's been
He should
rotated
be.
before, but that's usually around other matches. And
I would think possibly if there is going to be rotation, it might come in game week 36 because they're playing 3 games in a week.
yes, he said that, hasn't he? It's
He
the third
has.
game.
Yeah.
So well, that's fine. We will have a bench then. So
Yeah.
bring it on, and I'll quite happily take Jimenez for 10 minutes over most other players. As
Absolutely.
well. Now the other there's a couple of other players that I'm interested in, and that's over at Man City. They also obviously have a double game week. They've got Spurs dropping by. There seems to be this never-ending playing of Spurs at the moment with them in the Champions League, and then it's a trip to Manchester United. So they're potentially tough games, but do City ever have a bad fixture? And but yeah, Neil, who do you think the City stars could be the best for the captaincy for those looking at the likes of KDB, Sterling, Aguero, etc.?
Well, the 2 obvious names that stand out are Aguero and Sterling. They're the ones we've been talking about all season. Well backed in wildcard squads, 34. And yes, there is the possibility of De Bruyne or David Silva or someone like that outscoring them. But I would think if it's not Jimenez, it's between these 2 in terms of most people's choices. Now, Aguero and Sterling, people might be worried about rotation in midweek with 3 games in space of 7 days or whatever it is, and then obviously they're playing tonight as well in the Champions League. So that could have a bearing. We'll wait to see what happens this evening. But when they've been available and fit this season, they've started in every match against the big 6. This is Sterling and Aguero. So they're Pep's trusted lieutenants, aren't they, in terms of the real big games. And especially at this point in the season where every game is must win. They can't afford to slip up. They might have their minutes managed in terms of if City are cruising, the 3 or 4-0 up, then those would be the players to remove. But yeah, they are. I'd be more confident about those 2 players playing both games than I would about someone like De Bruyne, for example. But even just looking away from starts, like the stats are pretty good. I mean, Aguero is a big game player. He's his last 4 against the sides that we call the big 6 in the top half dozen clubs. He scored 8 goals, 2 which were hat-tricks. We all remember the Chelsea and Arsenal.
It was indeed.
Yeah, so I mean, all of us have been at home. I have to say that, and he has been better at home this season than he has away. I think just 7 attacking returns versus 22 with the Etihad. But they have got one home fixture within that, and that is Spurs.
Yeah,
and that will come 3 days after less than 3 days really, less than 72 hours after the Champions League clear. And you would think Spurs will be doing a lot of running tonight, chasing after the ball, hopefully being tired out. And and then they've got a Man United team who are without a clean sheet in 9 competitive games. So that's not necessarily, they're not quite the team they were when Solskjaer first took over. We saw the limitations last night. So I don't think these 2 fixtures are as bad as the sort of first appear on paper.
No, I've got that in my notes as well.
Yeah,
Spurs as well, 1 clean sheet in their last 6 away
yeah,
trips.
yeah,
They've conceded 9 during that time. That's not great. Manchester United, you've obviously mentioned over the last 9 game weeks, but over the last 6 matches, obviously no clean sheets, but they've shipped 9 goals as well. Rotation could be a factor. The clean sheets this midweek of the Champions League. This video and podcast has been recorded before the Champions League match between Spurs and Man City. That could give us a clue. But of course, we've got 2 matches here. I just wanted to point out, you mentioned about Aguero, Big Six. He really likes these 2 teams as well. Aguero has scored 9 goals in 13 matches in all competitions against Manchester United. He's also scored 10 goals against Spurs in 14 matches. That's all in the Premier League. And Sterling as well. Now, Sterling, particularly away from home, hasn't been great against the Big Six sides. This is at home against Arsenal and Chelsea. It just depends whether you consider them away as a top 6 defence. But nevertheless, he has done well against Spurs in particular, and that's the game I think could be a Sterling game. Sterling has 3 goals in his last 3 league games against Spurs. I couldn't find... Now, I might be wrong here, and you might better help. I was trying to find a goal by Sterling against Manchester United for City, and I couldn't find one in the league. So it may be that he's never scored against them. But
that doesn't... off the top of my head, I mean, I'll look into this a bit more, but I can't think of one.
I couldn't find any. I was searching and searching. So if people are listening and watching, if you've got a Sterling goal, then send us a clip, and so we can see him fire one in against Manchester United. But it's that Spurs game. I think that's a good one for him, and he should be well used to playing them by then. But I think looking back at the history of being big game players, Aguero is the one I slightly favour. But last night on the Scoutcast, I said that one of my big problems this season where I've got it wrong, is I've often backed Aguero over Sterling, and it's cost me dearly for the captaincy. So I like both of them.
There's not much to split them, isn't there? And that is the worry, that you decide on the wrong one. I mean, at least you own both, Joe. I mean, I only own Aguero and De Bruyne, so that kind of makes if I do go City, makes my decision a bit easier. But yeah, in terms of XGI, Sterling's better away recently. Aguero's better at home. There's not much between the two, but obviously, Sterling's got that potential to. I mean, they've both got potential to explode, but Sterling's, the extra points you get for midfielder scoring, and then you get the clean sheets bonus, of which City have been keeping a lot this certainly this calendar year. I really couldn't split them. I'm looking forward to David's Captain Sensible article this week, because he's really be earning his corn then. I think trying to separate those two.
I think ultimately this is going to be a hindsight thing, really. Ultimately, it's going to be who actually plays. I think if I see Sterling and Aguero on the team sheets for both those matches, I'll be very excited. But I just wonder if Sterling may get a rest for one of them, because he has been putting in the minutes recently. But then I guess it all depends on whether he needs a rest or not. And, we've tried to second guess Pep. Sometimes you just go with the player you think's going to score more and hope he plays. Looking at Spurs, so obviously they're a mixed bag. They've got the City visit, but they're also hosting our good friends at Brighton and Hove Albion. So which Spurs assets do you think look best for the armband if we were to go that way?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because that was I mean, it wasn't a shock necessarily that he rotated heavily, because he did heavily hint that he's going to do so against Huddersfield, where it might have put a few people off that Brighton home game, which is the one that we want, isn't it, for double game week 35. Not writing City way off, but just looking at their defensive stats this year, they're 8 clean sheets out of 13 games. They're the best, no matter what criteria you apply in terms of defensive stats. So like shots on target, shots in the box, big chances conceded. They're by far and away the best team. They've conceded almost half as many shots in the box as Liverpool have in 2019, and they're like the second best defence. So I wouldn't hold that much hope for that game. But we also how utterly abysmal Brighton were, and that's the game you'd want to exploit, really, if you're an owner. I mean, I've got both Son and Eriksen. I don't think I'll captain either, But if I was to pick an option, I think I'd maybe side with Eriksen, because he's got the all round threat. Really, he's third for the last 6 matches. I think he's third in both attempts on goal and chances created amongst midfielders. So he's not hit the heights of previous seasons. I think watching him this season, just based on the eye test, he's not. He isn't on top form. But he's hit a bit of FPL form lately, and he started, every match since, going back to 2018, back at Christmas, and played 90 minutes to boot as well. So he was a top point scorer in double Gameweek 32. He only got an assist against Huddersfield, which was a bit disappointing. But with Son, I think there's probably a higher point ceiling. But there's always the risk that he's going to get benched. I mean, he's been a substitute in 3 of Spurs' last 4 Premier League games. Yes, there's been obviously factors around that Champions League, his own fatigue from a long period of games with both South Korea and Spurs, and then Dele Alli, who we might expect back tonight. He's just playing too deeply. I think at the moment he's sort of playing in a more withdrawn role. Still gets involved in the box now and again, but he's definitely, I think, in third place behind those two. So I would probably side with Eriksen if I had to go with Spurs. But personally, I don't think I'll be touching them with the armband, even though I'm representing, in twice over with Eriksen and Son.
It's almost like, it's like you want good fixtures for your captaincy, but in a way you don't. With City, I think there's a possibility Sterling might get a rest, but they're both such key fixtures.
Yeah,
I feel slightly more confident he won't, and I really think Aguero will play twice.
Yeah,
but
I think you're right.
With Spurs, I think Eriksen has to play surely against City in the Champions League. He has to play them in the league because they have a chance of getting some points from that. And then you look at the Brighton game, and I think, well, if you're going to rest, when are you going to rest them? And that looks like the game where Eriksen could get that rest if he plays the next 2. And the same with Son. But I totally agree with you. If we act under an assumption that Eriksen, that all the key players are going to start, Eriksen is. I mean, just looking at the last 4 matches, even 16 shots. So it's only Salah and Sterling have had more. So that's continued even recently. And he's had 20 chances. So De Bruyne has had 18, for example, over that time. The one though is the big chances are 0. So for example, Sterling's had 4, Rashford's had 5, Mane's had 3, and so on. So that it's not of a quality, but I guess that's what you expect from a midfielder who's shooting as well. And they're just perhaps not quite as good, not on range as well. It's only 6 of his shots are inside the box.
Exactly, that's you hit the nail on the head there. He often chances he's on from distance, doesn't he? He's a sort of a shoot on sight policy rather than wait for clearer chances.
So for me, he's a player I'm really happy to own, but I would not put the armband on when you've got the City assets and Jimenez as well. And just another point to bring up about Ali and Son. Now Son's stats look quite bad, but poor lad's only had 1 start, as you said. He's been a substitute, and he's had 4 goal attempts, and he came away with an assist in about 3 minutes last time out. But and the point you raised about Ali playing deeper, and I think the stats bear that out as well. So his goal attempts are 6. And he's had 4 starts. Son has had 1 start, and his shots are 4. So that shows what Ali's doing. He's staying back. So he's had 7 chances as well from 4 starts. That's not great. So he's the guy that's passing to the guy that's making the assist at best at the moment. So not so keen there. Arsenal have got pretty good fixtures, I think. Palace visiting, their trip to Wolves. But will rotation and away form put people off their players, Neil? What do you think?
Certainly putting me off. It certainly put me off. I don't own any Arsenal players. My original sort of template, I'm a wild card, was going to be to allow me to get Lacazette in for this before I thought better of it. And that sort of panned out on Monday night. He was benched quite unexpectedly. Really, I think we all thought he would start. He was withdrawn, I think, midway through the second half of that Napoli game last Thursday. I think just the sheer unpredictability. There's no doubt that they will score goals. I think in double game week 35, and if you've got an Arsenal asset already, then you probably stick with them.
Yeah.
Because they're capable of doing damage off the bench. I mean, we've seen Aubameyang countless times this season coming off the bench to get an assist. There was those two double-digit goals against Fulham and Leicester earlier in the season. And Aubameyang, despite the fact that he's only started 3 of the last 7 in the league, he is second top for XGI in the last 6 matches amongst all players, just behind Lukaku.
Yeah, I mean, Foster gifted him the goal, but in a way, Aubameyang. There was something on, I think it was on TalkSport, Dean Saunders saying that Aubameyang goal was his favourite of the season, and I can see his point, even though it didn't look it, but I can see his point in that he was there and he had the presence to very, very quickly take advantage. So that's that proves he still got it basically. But who's going to start? We don't know, and that's what's put me off all season. And they're so expensive. Ramsey, I might consider taking a punt on, because he's so cheap. If he's benched, whatever. But 10 million, 9 million tied up on the bench, no, not for me.
I think we've yet to see Arsenal play this Thursday in Naples. So that that's Emery would never say it, but I think he's got history with the Europa League. I think he's possibly now prioritising that. Would you say? I mean, throughout the season he hasn't done so. He's played his second string, but he's possibly looking at that as not just a way to get into the Champions League next season, but just a chance to win a trophy. They're already halfway there in the Napoli game, so. If they do get through this, not only is there the threat of rotation for, game week 35 with Palace at home, but also around 37 and 38 as well when they're playing Brighton and Burnley, which is when the Europa League semi-finals are held. I know we're not looking at that just yet, but that puts me off.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we so rarely mention them high up. In these captaincy videos. What about any other double game week assets? So we've got Manchester United, Watford, Southampton, and I'm not even going to say Brighton. So let's just pretend Brighton haven't got 2 games. Manchester United, Watford, and Southampton. Any there appeal, or it's just none? It's just going to cut the mustard compared to Jimenez and the City lads.
I suppose there's 2 ways looking at it. I think with my sensible head on, I think there isn't really a viable pick from those players. Not when I'm, we're talking about Soldier and Fields and all that, but I'm sort of trying to half protect my rank whilst also, clawing my way into the top 10k if possible. But, there will be people out there who are looking for differentials, who want to make a last-ditch maverick move. You would say of those teams you just mentioned, I think Watford's got the best double-header, haven't they? I think they've got Huddersfield away, Southampton at home. But who would you back? Pereira and Delafeu have got yellow flags over them. We're not sure how fit they're going to be. Deeney's suspended. He was part of my wildcard team. I'm going to have to offload him now. And then Gray, my differential tip a couple of weeks ago, he's people might be making the sideways move to him. But would you put the armband on him? He's not guaranteed.
I wouldn't even get him in, play. Let alone put the armband on him. No.
Yeah, and I think if Delafeu is fit, he's not even guaranteed to play because. They've also got Isaac Success, who traditionally has played the Deeney role when he's not been there. So there's doubts about that. So I think you probably write the captaincy off. I'm not saying they're bad players to have in your team. I'm still considering it a Watford asset, but in terms of captaincy, I think I'd stop short of that. United, I suppose. It's just the calibre of their fixtures. I think Everton away. I know Everton had that slip up against Fulham, but you expect them to bounce back even more. Against United, and they've played really well against big 6 teams recently. They held Liverpool to a 0-0 draw. They beat Chelsea. They beat Arsenal. So I think Everton will rouse themselves for that game. And we saw last night, the standout the standout options for Man United are generally Pogba and Rashford. Pogba is now playing in that deep role. He was playing in the same sort of position he played in for France against who were they playing last week? West Ham. West Ham, so that double pivot. Which suits him more as a player, but not as a fancy asset. Rashford is a little bit off the boil, I would suggest. Of late, we saw him last night. He's got that sort of Cristiano Ronaldo mentality now of just taking toe poke shots from distance and not coming off. He's got 1 Premier League goal since game week 25. no assists in that time either. So there's a lot of doubt, I think, over all of these players that we're mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, and just before we go, there's some people there, especially those that went for Duffy last time out. I think, well, why don't we just go for a single game week player?
Yeah.
We don't know who's going to play twice, so we're effectively getting a single game week player anyway, potentially. And I guess the two key teams to look at there for those wanting to do that are Liverpool with the trip to Cardiff, and Chelsea at home to Burnley. If someone wanted to captain a single game week player, who would be the best shout, do you think?
Well, yeah, I think you made the point there looking at Liverpool last. I think those are the ones I'd be looking at. Cardiff did have a great result last night, but they have been woeful against the Big Six. I can't remember what they're up to now. I think it's 31 goals conceded and 10 defeats against the Big Six this season out of 10. So they haven't got a great track record. What I would say now is that they don't really have to win this game, Cardiff, so they're not going to be on the front foot. I would still expect Liverpool to go and beat them. But yeah, in this game week where, we saw what happened in 34, the mini game week, where a lot of single game makers that we've discarded have gone on to perform well. Then yeah, I wouldn't argue against Salah or Mane. Salah's top of midfielders, for example, for shots and penalty box touches over the last 6. He's second for shots on target as well. Mane is second only behind Sterling for big chances in the last 6 as well. So they've got some good underlying stats to back it up, as well as coming into a bit of form now as well after a bit of a blank period, especially for Salah. So yeah, I think just the 2 bites at the cherry mentality is will prevent me from backing a single game week. Yeah. But I will be strongly revisiting them in game week 36 for sure.
Yeah, no, I wanted to mention them as well. I'm the same. I've got captaining Duffy last time out. Mentioned it again. That proves that I'm the kind of manager that likes to back a player that plays twice or potentially twice. And I don't consider single game weekers even if they are good. But those that do, I think yeah, Salah, Mane, Hazard are potential ones there. But perhaps for another video, another podcast about key assets really. And of which I would probably put Bournemouth's players in there because of course they have Fulham at home, so they are also good assets who could be worth bringing in, but perhaps not for the armband. But for now, Neale, thanks so much for your time, and good luck with the game week.
Yeah, hope to see you physically tomorrow. Ta-ra.
Bye.